I know that there's a bunch of questions. Representative Dennis Williams is in the House. Um, there's some questions regarding the large capacity of the power, your own power versus using the local electrical utility for this. Um, there's, I know some people have said, well, is this is it a two-for deal? Are these separatable? Is the data center on the electrical grid with some other backup? Is that something that you are considering, or is that just ruled out? And let me add one last one. If the Newark site is not approved, is there another Delaware site that you have explored?
Okay, I'll let Cole answer that question. I just wanted to follow up on the brownfield side of this. There is an agreement in place between 1743 Holdings, which is the owner of the property, and the data centers as far as how the brownfield remedial action plan will be executed.
Hang on one second. Okay, as we talked about in the presentation, we need about 108 megawatts of electric load. That load is for the data racks in each of the phases of the data center. Each phase of the data center is 56 megawatts. So that's feeding the critical loads, data racks in the white space. The 90 megawatts that you see up there is for the cooling of those racks, for the lighting in all the buildings, and other ancillary loads, running pumps and fans and equipment like that. The 50 megawatts that we have in redundancy, we need to talk about the redundancy just for a minute. Since this site, we are not going to take any power from the grid at all. We are producing all the power that we need on our site. And part of our innovative design is we've taken the battery backup part of a standard data center out of the process. And in doing that, we need to provide additional generators to provide power, and those generators will be spinning all the time due to the nature of their gas turbines and gas reciprocating engines. So that capacity of 50 megawatts gives us our backup. If we have a failure on a primary generator, we can spin up the other generators and provide backup, because our data center, part of our business model is providing 100% uptime to our customers. So that totals up to the 248 megawatts number that people are probably familiar with. It will also give us the capability to provide some of that power back to the grid if that would be required.
As far as exploring solar, wind, biogas, bloom boxes, et cetera, as your backup, just wouldn't be consistent. What's the reason for not including that in your current plan?
Solar and wind, actually, we will be purchasing wind power for our site. Solar and bloom boxes, we've explored them, but right now they don't fit into the design technically or financially, just due to the large amount of power that we need.
Environmental impact statement, is that a process you go through with DENREC and describe all the impact that you guys do? When will that be filed, be available for the public?
Right.
As part of the air pollution, the air construction permit phase of air permitting, we will need to address impacts beyond just air quality, and that talks to many of the subjects that are covered in a NEPA type or National Environmental Policy Act type of assessment, but there is no formal NEPA assessment required. It is handled within the air permitting.
Okay, so do I understand that there's not a comprehensive filing by the applicant for?
It will be part and parcel to the air application, air permit application package. It will be addressed in there.
Okay,
Impacts to wildlife, impacts to wetlands, impacts to groundwater, trees, that is covered in the application for construction.
do you have an expectation to share as far as the timeline for that filing?
The air permit should be going to DENREC in the next few weeks.
Okay. The information here, or what's going to be you're going to have on your website tomorrow, can you share what's going to be on your website tomorrow? Did I hear that? Say again? Oh, all the questions that we're raising here and the responses will be on their website, which is thedatacenters.com. So that's a good thing. Go ahead, Gene.
Not only is the questions going to be up there, we'll put this presentation up there as well. There's going to be some renderings that we're going to get later on this week from our architect that you've seen around here, and we'll have those posted on our website as well.
Thank you. Let's move on to water. Can you talk about what you're going to be requiring, where it's coming from, what you're doing with it internally, and then what you're doing with it when you're done with it?
Okay. First of all, we will be reusing the Chrysler water infrastructure and the sewage infrastructure that's already in place for the old Chrysler plant. Something wrong here. We'll be using approximately 2,800 GPM for the site, and that is a combination of cooling tower water. Actually, the majority of it is for cooling tower operation, and then we have a minimal amount of water for bathrooms and other, standard office and facility water usage. For the cooling towers, there's two major pieces of a cooling tower. One is the evaporation, and one is the what's called the blowdown. And the type of cooling towers that we're installing will have equipment on the top of them to capture the evaporation and allow it to drip back into the cooling towers, so that we'll be recycling that water. The amount of sewage pipe that is actually going off the site is, like as I said, is the existing Chrysler infrastructure. That'll be a 4-inch discharge line, which is smaller than most grocery stores that you guys are familiar with.
I'm going to move away from the speaker in case that's doing something.
Yeah.
2,800 gallons per minute.
Yes.
That fits through 4 inches of pipe.
No. The 4-inch, that's the discharge line.
Okay. The input line is how big?
There's an existing 12-inch line coming in from the south end of the site, and an existing 16-inch line coming in from the north end of the site.
Okay.
That are coming from the United Water system. We won't be taking any water from the city of Newark.
So, can you explain for us where the water is coming from? United Water. Okay, so it comes from the ground someplace.
Mm-hmm.
Where at, and how will that directly or indirectly affect us?
Well, it comes from United Water, and United Water really should answer that question. We've met with them.
United Water has the franchise for the Star campus and used to serve the Chrysler plant. The demand for water for this data center is a small fraction of what Chrysler used to demand from that same water system. The United Water's principal water intake is down at Stanton on White Clay Creek. They also have well fields in the southern part of their distribution system below Red Lion.
And to this not well-versed scientist, you get 10 inches of pipe bringing water in and 4 inches of pipe bringing water out. What happens to the other 6 inches of water?
Well, the demand isn't continuous, first off, for the water coming in, and second, the a portion of the water that is being used will be lost to evaporation. and the residual amount will end up in the sewer. And it's a small fraction of the overall water balance at the site. There are a couple other things that, as far as water conservation goes, as part of the LEED process, water conservation is a key topic, and we're looking at capturing a portion of the stormwater, capturing a portion of the condensate off the chillers. That will be termed gray water and will actually be used to flush toilets, urinals, and cut down on the potable water demand for the facility.
Is it correct that since plans have not been filed with the city yet, they haven't been able to explore whether the refresh demand for the wastewater is within the city's infrastructure abilities? That's not a question for you guys. Is that correct?
It's obviously it's been discussed with the city at this point. The sewer capacity, the site sits on the trunk line sewer that conveys sewage from western Newark and takes it over to Wilmington. And that trunk line used to have the capacity for the Chrysler plant, which was far higher discharge than what this use will be, or this use plus Bloom plus other activities that are going on at Star Campus. So it has capacity, and it's actually running, it's flowing well under its capacity since Chrysler went out of business.
The 10-inch inflow source, which you indicated that's for peak use. Do you have because we like big numbers, gallons per year input? And when you're working at full capacity, is this okay? You guys can hear? Okay.
Oh, we don't have it in the gallons per year because the way United Water works is gallons per day. But we'll be using just a little under 3 million gallons a day at max usage. But that only occurs at
3 million gallons per day, max.
And I know that sounds like a huge number to everybody, but it's significantly less than the Chrysler plant. And that only occurs in 2 months of the year. The rest of the year, it'll be, 25 to 30% of that. And that number is dictated by the humidity and by the cooling loads. And we can get into more engineering stuff if we want to. But that's our max requirement.
And just to touch back on what Andrea said before, if there are questions to get deep into the weeds, such as, okay, let's get into the numbers of that, if you email them to the website, I'm assuming info@thedatacenters.com, that can be fielded, and perhaps even the answers posted on the website. Is that accurate?
That works.
Let's jump over to chemicals. What nasty chemicals are you guys using? What would you guys be using? Would you be storing? What stuff are we going to read on the front page of the News Journal 4 years from now?
You want to handle this one, Rick?
The pat answer is not much. There will be aqueous ammonia on site. That's part of the treatment train for the NOx that we were talking about earlier. You need to inject ammonia into the exhaust stream to react with the catalytic oxidizer that's there to destroy the NOx. So there has to be ammonia storage. We'll be storing it in its liquid form, its hydrated form, which is, out of the options, is a much safer way to store ammonia than, for instance, anhydrous ammonia. The cleaning of turbines mostly is steam cleaning and water. There aren't a lot of chemicals involved in that aspect. The cleaning of the gas engines, when they come down for maintenance, probably need some solvents, probably mineral-based solvents, to clean parts. Any other lubricated and rotating equipment will take some maintenance, which means cleaning, usually with a solvent. and then before it goes back into use. Any of the wastes that are generated, which we have no numbers on at the moment, would have to be stored in compliance with the state laws and the fire marshal's requirements, and disposal would have to go to a permitted facility. Most solvents that would be used at the site could be recycled. As far as maintenance goes on that,
The question is, I think,
I
the
don't,
chemicals for the CO2 recapture process, is that right?
that I can't honestly answer at the moment. Air Liquide has developed that technology, and we can get that answer, but yeah. But right now, that is hasn't been designed yet.
Can we move on to turbines? And I know nothing about turbines, but I can read questions. How many, what kind of turbines will be used? Are they simple cycle or combined cycle? How many hours will they be permitted to run each year? You talk about how you're approaching presumably the engines of your, I think the phrase is electrical generation facility.
Yeah, that's fine. We'll be using a combination of gas-fired turbines and natural gas-fired turbines and natural gas-fired reciprocating engines. At the full build-out, we'll have 7 gas-fired turbines operating, which will allow us for 1 down for maintenance, and we'll have 3 gas engines operating. And since they're our primary power source, they'll be operating, all year round, and that's part of the air permit. So the air permit requires us to list our potential to emit for every engine, every source that we have on site. The gas turbines will be 25 megawatts each, and I know you guys are going to start doing math, so that's nominal capacity. For those engineers out there, you guys understand what that means. And the reciprocating engines are 18 megawatts apiece.
Where the turbines manufactured? Do you have what source company is producing those, or is that not yet decided?
It's not yet decided. We're working on specifying those. They'll most likely be a GE or Solar or something of that level. Yeah, it'll be a U.S. based company. So.
For the
combined cycle. We are using combined cycle, our whole plant. So we'll be generating steam from the exhaust streams of the gas turbines with HRSGs. What's that? Well, that's a good question. The question is, what are we going to do with all that steam? We're going to generate some power, which is all part of the 248 megawatts. We're also going to be generating our cooling water with steam using steam-driven chillers. Because we've got plenty of steam, we're generating it anyway. We're using it to reduce the temperature of the exhaust streams. Does that answer your question? Okay. Does that answer your question about combined cycle?
Okay. Do you have more?
The HRSGs are actually in the buildings here, and here.
The Air Liquide is doing what part?
They're doing the CO2 capture.
Okay. Is that a loud process, and how is that addressed?
It's actually not. It's actually a very quiet process. The exhaust gets ducted over to them through a big pipe, basically, and they treat it to condense the CO2 out and then they purify it and liquefy it and store it in tanks. But there's no rotating equipment involved other than the booster fan to bring the exhaust over. It's a chemical process.
Is there a facility in the depiction?
Yes, it is. It's actually right here. You can see with the big long tanks. It's a relatively small facility. So,
Let's talk jobs.
okay.
Thousands of construction jobs. How's that? How do you, maybe, is it man years, or how do you measure employment and how long the construction jobs last? And then we'll go into the full-time and part-time.
Okay. The construction jobs, we calculate that based on man years, really, to build all these buildings, to build out the site and do all the site work. When we say thousands, I mean it's going to be probably 1,000 to 2,000 workers on site at any given time over the course of the next 3 to 4 years, to build out these buildings.
And the full-time jobs, do you have rough salary levels that you expect for those?
Yeah, our average salary is $63,000 a year for all those jobs. That's average, so hopefully that makes sense.
Sorry, a lot to read through here, guys. Okay. Let me hit my favorite topic of zoning. Can you describe how, from your perspective, the electrical generation facility is an auxiliary use or auxiliary need of the data center?
It's actually, when you say auxiliary, it's a primary need of the data center. The data center cannot operate without it because we are not taking any power from the grid. So we have no other way to power our servers and our cooling other than to generate the power ourselves.
Let's talk about disasters. You mentioned in your rendering, you're right off of the CSX tracks, and they carry petroleum-filled tank cars. What have you done in your plans to help the community feel safer when we add that dynamic to an already worrisome dynamic?
What was the first part of that question?
You're right next to the CSX tracks, and they carry fuel cars to the refinery.
Okay.
What is in your plans to help the community sleep well at night when we have the meltdown up in Canada with the rail car thing? It sounds like putting a electrical production facility.
It's okay. We're all friends here.
Okay, a power plant next to the tracks.
But no, what we're doing is part of the sound remediation that we're doing with the berming. We're going to have a relatively wide and tall berm to protect against any kind of train derailment from coming into our property. For the reason that you mentioned, we don't want to create a natural disaster. We also, part of the data center security is to protect against items like derailed trains coming into your facility. So we'll be protecting the facility against that.
I remember hearing that the construction jobs are union jobs.
Mm-hmm.
That's in writing?
Gene?
I'm happy to. Yes, they will be union jobs. We're going to hire union workers to do union jobs. The primary reason for that is because this is a very intense and complex facility. It is closely integrated, and it has a lot of interworking parts that are very, very complex. We need skilled workers to be able to accomplish this period, and we know that the unions can supply us with those skilled workers, and that's very simply the reason why we're selecting union labor for doing this.
Thank you.
Actually, the other item I'd like to add to that is the unions will be able to supply us with the amount of labor we need on demand, because our construction schedule, as everybody knows, construction schedules get short. So that's the other reason we're using union labor.
Thank you. The natural gas supply pipelines, you're installing a new one so you have redundant supply, is that correct?
Yes, actually, there'll be two gas lines. One gas line comes to the site. The other gas line is about a half a mile away. So we'll be installing that new gas line to bring it into the site, and we'll be upgrading the other line to handle the pressure that we need for our gas turbines.
Okay. Obviously, this is a big room, and not in your backyard is a big issue. So where are those pipelines going to be running? And why should we sleep well at night? That's the question today.
Yeah, this is a very simple question, and it's a very simple answer. The gas pipelines that we're having installed and the ones that we're enlarging run in existing pathways that already come onto the campus or come near the campus. We're not putting any new ones in that aren't already in place, other than that last half mile that Cole talked about. And that is literally a half mile from the site, and that will be the only new construction of a gas pipeline. All the existing routes and right-of-way is already in place. All we're doing is enlarging what's already there. We're not creating something different or new. But we are putting in 21 miles of pipeline.
Can you describe where the half mile runs through?
Actually, we don't have a site plan with us, but we can post a site plan for everybody's review on the website, and you can see exactly where it is.
The natural gas is coming from where?
It's coming from Eastern Shore is the supplier. We have one line comes from the Parksburg pumping station, and where's the other line? Hockessin pumping stations.
That's pumping it out of the ground, or that's pumping it from?
No. No, it's not pumping it out of the ground. It's boosting the pressure, and when I say a pumping station, it's really a pressure boosting station to boost the pressure to get it to all the customers.
You really want to know where we're purchasing it at. That's
Sure.
different than where we're transporting it from. What happens is in the Hockessin and the Parksburg pumping stations, there are two national pipelines that come from there. We're buying our natural gas at a location called the Louisiana Exchange. And we buy it on the market just like everyone else does in large quantities, which lowers the price to us and to you. And that what we do is then we just push it through the pipeline to where we're at. There's two separate transnational pipelines, one that comes into Hockessin, one that comes into Parksburg. We did that on purpose for redundancy. We cannot afford to have this facility go down at any point in time, so we're taking it as far back as we can control. And that's really literally the answer to your question. Where we're purchasing it is at a exchange in Louisiana.
The 290 full-time jobs, how do you have any plans that you can share to increase the odds that these go to folks who are already Delawareans, and if not, that become Delawareans? 23rd RD committee, that's a district that's even better.
We're actually working with several different areas, groups within the area to generate jobs for the area. It's very expensive to hire labor and then truck them to an area to work long term. And what we're trying to do is accomplish exactly what we've set out to do. I'm a veteran. I believe that veterans should help veterans. One of the programs that we're working with is helmets to hard hats. And that will bring local Delawareans who are Delaware veterans to our site for training and for jobs. And we'll continue to do that as long as I'm the CEO of this company. Now, we also I'm part of the Marine Corps League. I don't know how many of you know what that is, but it's a veteran service organization. We raise money for veterans who are not being supported by our VA and others. And the way we do that is by just basically volunteering our time and doing community service and helping these families who are sent overseas from regular jobs and get their pay cut by a third, down to a third, and then are expected to maintain their household the way they were before. And then they go for 3 or 4 tours of duty in some foreign country, come back to the United States, and the government doesn't do anything for them. I'm sorry, I'm passionate about this. But we will hire wounded veterans, wounded warriors from a variety of different programs to work in this facility because it's the right thing to do for our nation.
Thank you. The Salem nuclear plant, which isn't all that far away, has various emergency measures. They've got the horns and stuff on the poles and stuff like that. What emergency measures will be part of this to serve the community?
Okay, you see these industry standards. A lot of these industry standards are wrapped around what we're doing. These standards have settings for all this, for how to handle emergencies, for how to clean up your site, for how to maintain your site, and we're going to exceed most of these. We already know that. We can do it on the data center side easily. I've done it for years. We have the procedures for the data center portion that's done. We will hire an O&M company, an operations and maintenance company, to help us with the CHP side of this because we don't have a lot of experience in that area. And I know that was one of the questions. But we'll hire a company who is a professional company at running those kinds of facilities, and they will help us to generate everything so we can meet these standards. These standards drive the international business community, and we're going to exceed most of their standards.
Question for Carol Houck. How long is this going tonight? 9 o'clock? So we can be here till midnight, guys, okay? It's just like city council, right? The power plant, thank you. The power plant, is it regulated by the PSC? Is it, and if not, can you explain why not? The Public Service Commission.
No, it's not regulated. We are a CHP plant. We're not a power plant. We're a CHP plant. We are not formed to sell power to the grid on a regular basis. That's not what we're there for. What we're here for is to provide power to a data center. And, you know, just like the CHP plant on the university supplies power to the university, we're doing the same thing. It's our primary source of power. It's what we use it for, and that's all we're doing. We're not here to become a power plant or a utility company and sell power to the grid. It just so happens that we have 50 megawatts of power that's spinning all the time that we can sell to the grid. And there's no use in just wasting that electricity, so we're going to sell it if we can. If we can strike a deal or contract with a company, we will sell the power. If we can't, we won't. But it's a waste of power to generate it and not use it. So we have to generate it for the 100% uptime.
And another clear distinction that we need to understand is the difference in design between what you would consider a power plant and our design for the data center. A power plant would come in and drop one or two very, very large generators, connect them to one single gas supply, and let them spin and generate power. We're installing multiple units for our redundancy, as I discussed earlier. And as Gene is saying, we're installing these generators to supply power to our data center and to supply the redundancy for the power to our data center and the cooling.
Can you talk about the evolution of the power use of your customers over time and how that affects your plans for power generation capacity?
Sure. For phase one, if we look at the phase one building here, it's got 12 pods of 12,000 square feet. We will be initially supplying them with 3 to 4 megawatts per pod with this expansion capability to 7 megawatts. Now, all you math majors out there, don't go multiplying that out because we have, we're going to distribute that power. We only have 56 megawatts of power available for each phase, as we discussed earlier. So that comes to the 108 megawatts. So some pods may be as high as 7 megawatts, some pods are as low as 3 megawatts, depending on the distribution and depending on the client. But we will be able to grow with our clients as they need power and as they need more cooling.
I'm jumping around. I hope you don't mind.
It's fine.
Okay. Let's talk about the excess power. So you have excess power. Who do you sell to? How is that done? I'll just start there.
All right.
I've built this from scratch, so I know pretty much of the answers. So I'm not an engineer like Cole and Rick or Michael, but you know the easy business questions like this are pretty simple. The model is that since we have the power spinning, we will go out and we'll talk to people. In this particular location, the city of Newark is a local utility company, but they buy their power through DMEC, the Delaware Municipal Electric Cooperative. So our contract, if we are successful in negotiating one, will be with DMEC for that particular site. We're also applying for a PJM interconnect. The PJM is the grid, the company that runs the grid, basically. They're what's called an RTO. And I don't know what that acronym stands for, by the way, so. Oh, there you go, Regional Transmission Authority. But they have the power to distribute electricity throughout the grid, and they are the ones that controls your design of your substations and what you can and can't do on the grid, and how much power you can put on it, how much you can't put on it. Those applications cost millions of dollars to do, and we're applying for our PJM interconnect license and membership in the PJM itself. Now, that's a 2 to 3 year process, so we'll open our facility long before we get to that point. So initially, the way, because of our location, we have ability to distribute power directly to DMEC through the city's distribution system. And that's why we're building the city an $18 million substation on this location. Okay, and we're building that. It doesn't cost the taxpayers a dime. And we're working with the city to do that. And that's part of our process for sales and for the electricity going out.
Can you, as a follow-up, can you speculate on the impact on a city resident's electricity costs?
No, I cannot. I don't know what the impact will be.
We assume it would not be it would not have any reason to increase rates.
There's no reason to raise rates.
Mm-hmm.
In fact,
Sorry, on the microphone, please.
there's no reason to raise the rates.
DMEC represents not only Newark, but 8 other cities in the state, and the board of DMEC, which City of Newark is one of the members, will not vote on a PPA agreement unless it's good for all of the cities, not just City of Newark. So the price would have to be something that would be appropriate and something that is like what we could get from buy our power from elsewhere. So rest assured it should not have any impact because the rest of the board members won't vote on it.
On jobs, and let's focus on the full-time jobs. Can you talk about proportion of those being union versus non-union and proportion of those being salary with benefits versus contractors? Down.
Well,
Power plant versus data center.
Well, yeah, there's a clear separation there. Some of the maintenance personnel in the CHP will be union because of the nature of the beast there. But all the data center employees will all be salaried employees with benefits, with very good benefits, I might add.
It's a breakdown
No.
between the 290 between the full-time.
What? Right. Oh, the people will be from Delaware. I thought you meant the benefits. No, the benefits will be paid for by us. You can pay for me.
As a legislator, thank you.
Yeah.
On the breakdown of the 290 full-time and the 50 part-time, ballpark balance between the data center and the power plant?
Vast majority of the workers will be in the data center. There's maybe, I want to say like 30, maybe out of 290 that actually work in the CHP. By the vast majority, it's data center personnel or administrative staff for our offices. This will be our headquarters, our national headquarters to start with. So we will stay in that building as long as we possibly can until we outgrow it. And we have 75,000 square foot of office space to fill before we have to go anywhere. So we think it'll take us a while. I mean, considering we're only 8 people now, I think it'll take us a while to hire all those people. We're going to keep Andrea busy, but not that busy.
Can you talk about tax revenues? Because this is something that I think one phrase is, why should the cities bear the brunt of this for jobs that are across the state and across the area? So what are you doing for me? What are you doing for me as a city resident if this goes in?
Well, number one, we're paying all of our taxes. We're not getting any kind of rebates or whatever from the city or from the county or from the state. We got a $7.5 million grant from the state, an infrastructure grant, which says that as we spend money on infrastructure outside the University of Delaware campus, they will reimburse us. It's 3-to-1 ratio, I think, is what the negotiations are at right now. So for every $3 we spend, they'll give us $1 of that $7.5 million. Now we're spending $240 million in infrastructure outside of the campus. So as you can see, that's less than 5% of the total. It's really, a drop in a bucket at that point in time. But from a tax viewpoint, we're doing some economic analysis now because there's, what was that, Michael? Actually, I'll let Michael answer the actual tax revenue piece of this. We don't really have solid numbers yet. We have estimates that it's going to be more than $10 million a year in taxes, but we don't know the breakdown yet between the school district, the county, the city, and the state. We don't know yet. There's also going to be some of our clients will have to pay taxes as well, and we don't have that estimate either. Those economic analyses will be done over the next few months.
Can you describe, as you understand it, what the process going forward is? What happens between today and the first shovel hitting the ground? What hurdles need to be crossed?
Can I actually talk about how we got this far? would that help people?
Why don't you start with that?
As I said earlier in the presentation, I started doing this in 2006 with Cole, as a matter of fact. Cole and I started doing the design and trying to figure out how much electricity the grid could give us and how much of a failure the grid can take. Our research showed that no area in the grid in the United States can take more than 1 megawatt failure per hour without taking down huge chunks of the grid. That's part of why this design is so important to us, because of the amount of power. To provide the redundancy and backup that we need to accomplish what we're doing today, we would need 12.5 acres of batteries to back up the system. And that's a huge amount of hazardous materials and handling of hazardous materials that we wanted to eliminate from this process. So we did. Now, the grid itself in this area, for your second part of your question.
Sorry, help me out here, guys. Oh, yeah,
how did we get here? Right.
Yeah, I think you.
So,
what's next? What hurdles do you have ahead of you?
Well,
what's the process?
We just passed one of our first major hurdles, which was acceptance of the project site. We actually signed a lease with the University of Delaware, 1743 Holdings, in December of this past year, 2012, December 14th. We had 6 months in which to do due diligence on the site, which we've just completed recently, and we've accepted the site as of June 14th of this year. And here we are in September, and we're already here at a public meeting. This process that we're going through to develop this site takes years. It literally takes years. Right now, we're going for permitting to remove the old underground pieces and the foundations and the rest of it. Cole can tell you that.
So what we're working on right now is the demolition of the existing slabs and the existing debris that has been placed on the site. We are, as Rick mentioned earlier, we're looking to get our air permit in the next couple weeks, and we're looking for air permit approval in January or February, and that will then allow us to start full construction in the end of first quarter of next year. And during the air permitting process, we'll be working on the full engineering and design of the plant, of the CHP and the data centers. And then we're looking to open the doors in June or July of 2015. Is that enough granularity, or would you like more?
I'm sorry, I was reading questions, but let me get to the City of Newark hurdles that you understand are in front of you are what? What do you need?
Just construction permitting. It's not. I know people think it's a very complex project, but we're using all existing technologies that are well known, and the permit officials will be, obviously will be on hand if they need help. But we think the construction permitting process will be a standard, 30 to 60 day process.
Okay.
No, there's no zoning because we're on the Star campus. It's already zoned for what we're using it for.
I'm going to share the view that the City Council has asked for some clarification on whether that is indeed a done deal or whether there's an open question there. So they've contracted to get information on that. Let me just read this one. What about the health risks associated with living next to high voltage, and also the electromagnetic stuff, incidence of cancer, neurological disorders, etc., concerns for the community nearby? Why should we sleep well at night with this going forward? Should this go forward?
Well, all the power lines on our site will be underground to protect them. We'll be using existing right-of-ways and existing poles for the power lines that go off the site. We'll only be upgrading, we as TDC will be paying for the upgrades to the wires that go on the poles, so we're not going to be adding additional, areas where electromagnetic fields might, come into play.